So Matt, welcome. Thank you very much for the time. Really appreciate you joining us on the Irish Goodbye podcast. The podcast was started by my good friend and colleague, Carl Hudson, who is Irish, hence the name. And the idea behind it is we're interviewing friends, colleagues, people that we've worked with, real people that have real jobs and real success. And the idea is really to get your insight, what your journey's been like, and what information and nuggets of wisdom you've learned along the way, with an idea kind of ending the discussion with you passing on a piece of information or some detail that you would share with the next generation of leaders coming through. So again, thank you very much for the time. Obviously we worked together for many years, which was great, and we had a lot of success together. So it's great that you're here and you're taking the time to be on the podcast. So if I may, if I could just ask you to introduce yourself, give us a bit of your background and how you got to be where you are, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you for having me first and foremost. Really appreciate it. It's always good to have kind of the SE lens get included in podcasts like this. So I greatly appreciate that. But my name's Matt Barston. I currently run the SE team and the customer success team for North America at Zora. So I have a probably different past or different work experience to get into the role from a lot of people. My first job out of college, I was actually a BDR at a really small startup. I was employee like number 5. So I got to see what it was like in a very, very small startup environment. From there, I actually became an AE for a little while. I went and worked in their customer success team, and then they started making kind of all different jobs for me to do because I became the COO's fix-it guy. And by the end of my time there, I was running our sales engineering team. I was running our sales enablement team. I was doing some product management, and it was a lot. But what it really taught me was kind of, one, startups are a great place to learn and get a lot of experience. You can get probably what feels like 15 years of experience in 2 years at a startup because you're doing so many different things. But I also learned that I really liked the technical selling part, and that actually brought me to Zora, where I was hired in 2015 as a sales engineer. I think I was the youngest sales engineer on the team at the time. And I have now been there. Well, I was there for 7 years. I left for a year. I went to a company called Vivint. So I went back to the startup world to see what that was like. It happened to be during the tech downturn, which was an interesting experience, but actually taught me a lot. And then I came back to Zora and have been kind of running different sales engineering teams for the last 3 years. So it's been really exciting. Once again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, that's a great background there, and it's really interesting that you shared your journey there. And I think for people that are interested in careers in technology, it doesn't just have to be sales per se. There are many different avenues that you can take and many different career paths that you can choose. So, I'm interested to understand, when you tried all those things, what was it that lent you more towards the technical aspect of selling as opposed to BDR or account executive or product management that you did?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's a really interesting thing where when I went to college, I probably didn't really know what I wanted to do. I went to college initially for engineering. So I was very technically focused to start with, but I ended college with a history degree and I was contemplating going to law school, but wanted to do something in the meantime and ended up as a BDR. And at the time, I didn't even know what a sales engineer was. I didn't know it was a job. I didn't understand what it was like because unless you know someone that works in tech, tech doesn't really scream all different jobs and there's no college classes for it, at least when I went to college 15 years ago. So I was actually at a conference, maybe my, first month at my first job. And I was there as a BDR to help get leads at the booth. And I was sitting down at breakfast and I was just talking to some guy that was sitting next to me. And I was talking to him about how excited I was about whatever the new thing that this company had launched. And he was like, "Oh, so are you the sales engineer at your company?" And I was like, "I don't even know what a sales engineer is." So then I started finding out what it actually was. And what really pushed me in that direction was I really liked the technology side and explaining how the different products that we're selling provides value and solves really important customer problems for the companies that we're talking to. And I really liked the sales aspect as well. But when I went and took a step back and thought about like what really got me excited, and I look at AEs and SEs really like one of the, if you were going to like boil it down, like we really just help customers solve problems and solve problems in general. The AEs really focus on the commercial problems. And like, I think about all the times we work together, like you very much focused on how do I get like the deal through the door? How do I get the legal stuff done, the contract stuff done? And I was like, that stuff's cool, but like I really like solving the like technology problems. And that's what like got me most excited. And that was why I gravitated to that kind of SE role more, where I got to do some selling, but I also got to like really embrace the technology part that I really liked. And I actually think when you do it really well and you have a strong kind of sales focused SE working with a strong AE, you can actually have a really interesting pair. Because I always describe it to people when now as a leader, I interview lots of people for AE roles or SE roles. And one of the things I always tell people is like, what success looks like to me is when you have an AE and SE that support each other, know how to stay in each other's lanes, but also know how to back each other up in the right points. And I always describe it like in all the sales cycles I've been, some of the times where I've been able to sell the most is at the end of a sales cycle where the prospect really expects the AE to be coming like full bore, trying to convince them they need everything. But if you have a really good SE and they built a really good, strong technical relationship with that customer, and they're kind of treated as that really like strong technical advisor, when the SE starts selling and like, hey, this is why you really need this stuff on the bill of materials because of this problem that we talked about, this thing I demoed, it actually lets the SE sell significantly more and let the AE kind of focus on the right thing. And when you have a duo like that, you can really push, I think, bigger deals faster through some of these prospects. And that's always like the name of the game. If you can keep the deal velocity up, that's going to help you continue to build pipeline and get the stuff that you're working done so you can move on to the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, how would you, so with that technical mindset of problem solving and solving those technical problems, yeah, there is a convergence, as you rightly say there, around that problem solving and sales, you know, and doing that from a technical point of view. So how would you perhaps describe that convergence of those two skills, and what do you think makes or warrants success with the convergence of those two dimensions?
Yeah, I think that's a really good like way to talk about it. It is a convergence. And I think one of the things that you see a lot, and like I've seen in some of my experiences, I think people expect, hey, I can just take any technical person, put them in front of the customer, and they're going to do exactly whatever my SE can do. For whether maybe it's cheaper, maybe it's like, oh, they're more technical, they're talking to engineers, they'll be better. From what I've seen, that's actually generally not the case. There is a certain type of person that has this ability to kind of, for lack of a better word, dumb down the technology to a certain level of audience while then also geeking out on the technology with another level of audience. And if I use one, like when we work together selling at Zora, when you're selling to the finance team and the IT team predominantly, and maybe product, you have to be able to like geek out with the IT team and the product team on all the things the APIs can do, the value, how it's going to integrate. But you also have to dumb it down to the finance team of like, hey, this is what you're going to get and what you're going to be able to do without having to go talk to your IT team. And that's actually like a hard skill to find and master. And one of the things I've seen over my career is as I've tried to take people from the like professional services side that were solution architects and things like that and make them SEs, people think it's really easy to pick up like the SE soft skills and the selling part, but it's actually very difficult. And finding the people that are naturally gifted at it allows them to be a better SE quicker. But I think it's why you also start to see some SEs go and say like, hey, I want to move to be an AE, and they want to really focus on that part. And then I think a lot of them become really great AEs because they've learned usually from good AEs over their years and they know the technology. But it's an interesting convergence of how that all comes together. And then I think as you move up the SE like management ladder as an example, you need to be able to use that selling skill even more because you're in usually bigger conversations with prospects, but you're also selling a lot internally, which I think becomes a skill set that people don't think about as they move. But that sales skills you learn being like an individual contributor SE really allows for you to sell within your own building as you're fighting for more headcount or fighting for more budget or just fighting for anything within the building. that sales skills becomes really important. I think I've heard people say like, it's every employee's first job is to be selling, because you have to have some level of selling somewhere. And if you don't embrace that, you're going to really struggle no matter where you are.
Yeah, no, that's great insight. That's great insight. So what would you say to someone perhaps who's in a professional services or very technical position that wants to develop those skills? And how, as you're in that leadership position, how have you trained people, or how do you move them into that sort of more technical selling type position?
Yeah, what I usually kind of describe them is like, hey, I mean, we're in a great world now. Like, I think everyone's calls with customers are recorded. So it's always like, hey, go listen to this person's discovery call, go listen to this person's demo. Like, hearing it and seeing it happen is like the first initial way. And then there's just something to be said about, you got to put in like the hard work. And that means, I think one of the things that everyone hates the most is like doing the dry runs or doing like the mock demos and mock discoveries. And like, I get it. When I was an IC, I hated doing those. But as you like take a step back, or you see the output of those things, those are the way to actually get better. And it's like, hey, go find your SE leader and ask them to do, and say you want to do a mock demo, and to give them the like, ask to get the most feedback possible. Like, I feel like one of the things that people have, I know I used to get from like the person that was like kind of my SE mentor and boss at Zora for a long time, was like, he would give feedback, and that feedback generally was always negative. And he didn't mean it in a negative way. He was just trying to make you better. And I think there was always these things of like, people would be like, oh, you have to give 2 pieces of positive feedback for every 1 piece of negative feedback. And I understand that, but how you actually get really good at a job like this is you take that negative feedback and you make actions on it. So it's not negative, it's constructive. So go ask your SE leader, ask for the most constructive feedback, and just put the reps in, because that's the only way you're going to get really good at doing a job like this. I mean, it's kind of the same thing on the AE side. You need to put the hard yards in.
I think you make a really interesting point there in terms of feedback, because I do recall from our time together, we did spend a lot of time doing dry runs before we get into a big meeting. And I think for a lot of the customer probably doesn't appreciate when you do have a senior or an executive level meeting, there is hours and hours of preparation that's gone into that, which is how you get successful outcomes. But you mentioned something about feedback, and as you're a leader there, and you talked about it being negative feedback. I think that's a really important thing, is in how you deliver the message or how you coach people. And that messaging matters, because if you feel like, if you're the recipient of that kind of feedback and it's consistently negative, then that's not a good thing. But if you deliver it in a constructive way, there's a nuance there, but that difference, I think, matters and can really impact how people react to the feedback that's provided.
100%. And I think it's actually really interesting. Like, one of the things that I've started to really learn as I've been a leader for longer is you have to actually look at every single person that you're going to deliver this feedback to, and you have to get an understanding of like how they're going to take it, so you can deliver it in a like individualized way, which feels like it's like a lot, but it's the best way to actually do it to get the outcomes that you're looking for. There's going to be a set of people that you can give them what feels like harsh feedback, and they're going to take it, they're going to internalize it, and they're going to get stronger and like go action on it really well. There's another set of people where if you give that feedback in the exact same way, they're going to shut down, they're going to get worse, and like you're probably going to lose that employee in the next 3, 6, 9 months. But if you deliver that kind of feedback with the same points, but in a more constructive way or in a different tone with more things around it, you're going to get them to be able to go internalize it and execute it as well. So getting a good understanding of kind of how to deliver the right feedback to the right people allows you to get the most out of your team. And it's one of those things where I'm sure we're going to talk about like AI later, but like AI can give you lots of feedback. You can put it like, you can put your emails, you can put your output in it, and it'll help give you an idea. But there's some level of management skill that still needs to be there, where you have to understand the people that you're working with to be able to give that level of feedback. It's the same thing if you're an IC and you're working with as an SE like 3 or 4 different AEs, or if you're an AE and you're working with 3 or 4 different SEs and BDRs, how you communicate with each other is going to determine what that output looks like. Like we got to a point when we were working together where like we could give each other very direct feedback, positively or negatively, and we were going to get the outcome that we were looking for. But there are other people where if I gave that same feedback, they would either not take it at all. It would cause an argument. It would cause friction in the relationship. And like, especially in the enterprise selling world, the AE SE relationship is so close, and you have to remove friction and like be as close and back up each other as much as possible, that learning the ways to give that type of internal feedback becomes really important so that you can move the ball forward in the right way versus like both sides just complaining about each other and like butting heads.
Yeah, that's really great insight. And, you know, I certainly concur that we got to the point where we're able to share some very direct feedback with each other. But that's founded on I think the trust and the relationship that we established. So, you know, it's not taken in a personal or upsetting way. It's just like, okay, we trust each other, and we trust each other to provide the right feedback that's going to make us better as a team. So you thinking about that, you know, when and you know, your trajectory and your comments earlier about some of the different roles that you've had moving into that technical sales role, when did you first feel like you were sort of doing the right thing? When did you feel like you were in the right spot and not necessarily just perhaps showing up, but really making an impression?
Yeah, I mean, if I like think about my like really probably big 4.5, 5 year stretch where I was like an IC SE at Zora, like one of the things I always talk to people, and especially people that I hire, is like Zora is a really complicated product. Like it sits in the middle of your order to cash system. It has a lot of inputs. It can do a lot. It takes a long time to actually learn it. So what really feels like the first kind of 3-6 months, you are drinking from a fire hose. Then you start to feel more confident, and you might be leaning on other people like your manager in different areas. But where I felt like I really knew that like I was where I should be and I was going to then be able to like really accelerate was I was in a meeting with my boss. He happened to come. He was like, we were in Atlanta at a prospect. He happened to be in Atlanta seeing another prospect. So he came to my meeting. And as I had built my demo, I was getting ready, and I had all these points where I was going to like be talking through something, and then I was going to deliver like a big punchline that I knew was a big value point for the customer. And I was going and I was getting ready to give that big punchline, and he would interrupt me and say exactly what I was about to say, like the wrong point. And I would like not be able to always hold my like eye roll or my look of dissatisfaction. And it happened like 3 or 4 times. And like the meeting went well, but as we were leaving the meeting, one of the CIO at this company that we were selling to came up to me and was like, "Oh, Matt, you did a really good job. Like, I really appreciate you know our business." And she was like, I can't believe your boss kept stealing your moment. Like he just interrupted you right before you were going to say something. And I was like, all right, this is a good moment. And as we left, I went to this person. I was like, listen, I don't want you to come to any more of my meetings unless I need you to. And when you do come, I will ask you if I need your help. Like, I don't want you to insert anything more because like this happened. And that was like a big like learning moment for myself, because it was like, I know I can do what I like want to do within this role now. And I have kind of not mastered, but like as much mastered the material, the company, the value, that I can go and sell and really start to teach more versus needing people to support me as I go along the way. And that's also something that Len like really has influenced my managerial style, because I never want to put someone in that position and feel like that. And it's one of the things I always tell people, that like, hey, coming out of a meeting that we were both in, like if you felt like I was stealing your thunder or talking when you were about to, or revealing something as you were about to do it, like let me know, because I want to make sure that like you're the star, not me. Because I see like SE being that technical advisor and like that trusted technical person within the account is how you get big enterprise deals done. Yeah, like they want to trust the managers, they want to trust the whole company, but there's nothing to be said like that AE SE relationship in those big deals is how those big deals get done. They build the relationships, they build the trust that, hey, this is a company that I want to work with.
I love that you said that example. I think that's a really interesting example. And I think, you know, having having also been in a leadership position, I think especially as you become a new manager, moving from an AE to perhaps a first line manager, it's very easy to fall into that trap of perhaps stealing the
Being
show,
the super rep. Yeah.
being a super rep or trying to take over. And I think that concept, so for anyone that's going into those types of positions, that's a really important detail that you've called out there. And yeah, I think you have to, perhaps if it's not innate, you have to learn that skill as a manager to kind of sit back and let your AEs run the show. A great leader of mine once said, he's had a really good meeting if he shows up and he's present in the meeting and actually doesn't have to really say anything, perhaps top and tail things at the end. Obviously you want to contribute and add value, but his interpretation of that was, well, the AE or the SE or whoever it might be is doing a really good job of running the show and leading the meeting. I'm curious on one other aspect as well, talking about that relationship with the AE and the SE. I think I've seen examples in my career where the AE is really dependent on the SE to kind of just lead and drive the entire conversation. One of the things that I've always tried to do in my role as an AE is to make sure that I have a level of competency around the product, whatever kind of product it is that I'm selling, because I think that helps you generally drive those conversations. But have you experienced that in your career, and what do you think success looks like for an AE? Like, how should an AE come prepared for a meeting with a sales engineer?
Yeah. So that's I think probably the number one complaint you'll get from like the broader SE community is like, hey, the AE shows up, says, hey, here's my SE, sits in the back of the room and like plays on their phone until it's the end, and then they're like, you guys ready to buy? So I have had those experiences. I have watched those exact things happen. And it's really frustrating as an SE, especially when like SEs don't necessarily have quotas, AEs have quotas, but they also get bigger comp plans. And like you close $1 million deal, the AE gets a significant amount more than what the SE is going to get. So like seeing those types of things, like that's one of the things that probably really pisses off a lot of SEs. What I always look for is like product competency is really good. There's probably a line where me personally, I want the AE to not be as product competent, because I don't want them to say that, like, there's a set of AEs that get really confident and they're going to go say something they think they heard somewhere else and it's going to be wrong. And walking that back as the SE always is kind of difficult. So I want them to be there. The biggest thing I want AEs to do is I want them to be curious. I want them to do really good business discovery, because if the AE does a really good business discovery, the SE's demo can be super pointed to what the value and problem the customer actually has. And that makes everything like significantly more impactful. And then like run the meeting and build the right relationships. So the best AEs that I've seen is, hey, let's drive this set of the meeting framework at the beginning. The like, hey, what do we know? What do we hear? And then hand it to the SE, and then interrupt a little bit during the demo to help drive the actual right steps, or parking lot the right things, or try to put things right on track. But driving in on the product knowledge side is not necessarily what I want. And then it's sell when we're not in the room. It's like build the relationships with the CIO, build the relationship with the CFO. Like in the enterprise selling world, especially, like people still buy from people, and the like AEs that everybody really likes, like people will make fun of them. The ones that take people to dinner, the ones that take people to play golf, like they're usually still the ones that go to like P Club every year and are doing the like huge W-2s. So like people still like to buy from those people. So if you're really good at like owning the business discovery side and owning the relationship, and then letting the SE drive the technical ship while supporting in the right way, is where I've seen the most success.
Yeah, and I think that I totally agree with you. And I think that something that sometimes is overlooked is ensuring that you have a clear handle on what is a customer's business objective, and what is the impact to them or to the company of the product that you're positioning. And I think if you've got a good hand, like you said, if you've got a good handle on that business discovery, it makes that you're folding in the technical capabilities underneath that. And it sounds really, really simple in a way, but there's certainly an art and a science to it. But I would agree with you. I think that understanding that and always anchoring to that and validating that as you go through the steps is a really important trait to undertake. So, how would you define this? How do you define success now versus when you sort of initially started out and perhaps you had that BDR role, that initial technical sales role? How do you define success now versus when you started in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think it changes a lot as you go. But when I was I'll use really being an SE as an example. I define success by trying to get the most deals won and the highest ACV contributed for all of the SE team. And I think that's really important for the IC side, driving healthy competition between whether it's AESE, AESE pairs, regardless, is how businesses need to run to be able to execute the way they need to execute. When you start to move into the leadership roles, yeah, I'm still comped off of all that stuff closing. I still want to win. I'm still very competitive, but I'm not as competitive against other people within the building anymore. I might be more competitive with competitors, etc., of who I want to beat. But what success looks like starts to be different because you start to say it's very much not about me anymore, and it's about the team. And it's also about the team with the big T, not necessarily individual people on the team. And that's something that I think's really hard because you might have stronger relationships with certain people because you might have been ICs together at one point, or they might have been one of your first hires and you saw them grow, and those relationships are really good. But you need to also make sure you're seeing success across the whole team, because if you have two people that are doing awesome and everyone else is struggling, you're going to be spending a lot of time hiring people because you're going to churn people constantly. How do you make sure you spread success across the whole team and you focus your time on where you can up level everybody's game versus just trying to make the two best people better? I think I've seen the same thing kind of on the AE side, which is, hey, let's not make the A AEs into A plus AEs. We're going to actually do more for the business if we take the C AEs and we make them into C pluses, B minuses, Bs, because their rate's going to go up. Those AEs, they're probably already winning a significantly higher proportion. Moving their win rate up 2%, 5% isn't going to move the needle holistically, but making the lower end players go from, winning 30% of the time to winning 50% of the time is a huge ACV chunk, and is going to give you a huge ability to actually, as a leader, start to hit and exceed what your quota looks like. So it's really looking more holistically across your business and your team and up leveling kind of the whole team versus individual people. It's that phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
If I can make everybody better, it's going to make the whole team better. And it's also going to make the morale of the team better. And there's something to be said of, if you have really good morale in the team, it usually is tied to how much pipeline you have, but that's going to let the team go and execute significantly better. And once the momentum ball starts going, it's really hard to stop. So, and that goes on the positive side and the negative side. So trying to drive the most positivity so you have that momentum of things are going really well is what I start to look at as, hey, this is what success looks like.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point that you make there. So, and there is a shift as you go from IC, as an IC and as a successful IC, you have to be able to sort of lead a cross-functional team towards your objectives and goals. As a leader of a team, as you rightly say, you have to, rising tide lifts all boats. So how do you do that? What are some of the things that you would do to try and bring up perhaps the C's to a B and so on?
So I really try to as I look to where I can spend my time, I like to look at the people that I think I can make the biggest impact to increase that. So I try to get, especially as a second line manager now, giving specialized attention to the places where I think I have the most opportunity to increase people's individual skill sets. And then it's also, how do I let my A players be mentors across the team? Because I want them to build that leadership quality, but then also share their knowledge across so that they're actually learning. And then it really is all about sharing those like positive success stories and having the teams learn from each other. And there's a certain level of like, I also want to make sure there's an area where they can kind of blow off steam. Like everyone needs a point where they want to like complain about stuff. How do I give them a safe environment to have that ability to complain? Like one of the things that we've done at places is like had a Slack channel, because like everyone's remote now, that is effectively like the water cooler channel, where like it might not have any managers in it. It's just like an individual team, and they can go complain about whatever they want just to like get that out there, because everyone needs that outlet. Where I've seen like really big issues is people that just like bottle stuff up, or the worst is like for me is like people that tell me what I want to hear versus telling me things I can allow to actually like take an action on. So that's really like how I've been trying to do it, is like give people release valves, focus the places where I can, and then having my A players share their successes and just skills across the team. And it seems like it's worked pretty well to up level everybody. But there's always ways we can be better. And obviously like using AI to share knowledge with whatever, Google Notebook or whatever, has been a really big impact as well. And I think that's going to be a big thing in the future. But I think AI is great. It's making my life more efficient, but it's not going to like, I think, replace AEs or SEs anytime soon. People are still going to want to buy from people. And it's not going to be about how do you use some of this technology to make your lower end performers better. And AI, I think, is going to be a big enabler of taking a C player and making them a B player by giving them more knowledge and the skill of kind of an A player they can go ask a question to.
Yeah, and you mentioned something there around mentoring, which I'm a huge fan of, and I think is really, really important. And I think especially, as you've got those, good AEs or good SEs that sit across an organization, there's so much knowledge that those individuals have, and people love to share and love to bring people up, and as you say, rising tide lifts all boats. So that's something that I'm really big on, and I try and do myself and try and work with people on. So I think that's a really, really important factor. And it's great to hear about your strategy around bringing up the team and what you do. And obviously that's worked for you, and you've had a lot of success as we talked about. I think oftentimes when you see people that have success, you just see the success, but you don't necessarily see some of the tough times or some of the challenges that have been learning moments as you've gone through that. So is there any examples that you would share around that, or is there a belief or mindset that's kind of got you through or some of those challenges or tough times that you might have found on the way?
Yeah, I think as I like think back on my career, like there's probably been a few deals that we lost that I really thought that we should win, that go down as, I don't want to say scars, but like they've been things that I still think about. I'm still like a little bit upset about, but they become things that I learn from and like drive me to always be better and want to also beat those competitors. And it helps you really up level your game of like, sometimes you do need to lose or get kicked in the teeth to like take a step back and be like, all right, good. I need to learn from this and I'm going to get better. So that's been a really big thing that I've really like tried to hone in on, is that losing is good because you can learn a lot. And I know that's like one of those things that you hear in like lots of these leadership podcasts and things like that, but it actually is like real. Like, yeah, you don't want to lose all the time. Then that gets really negative, but like losing does help you really learn to actually drive to get to what you want to do. And like how you react to losing, I think it tells you a lot about the people. And like, when I look at now as like a leader, when I look at how people react when they lose to what they do in the next deal, that shows me how they're going to actually continue to grow. And that's what I try to foster. And I think back to like what I've done after these, and like they've always pushed me to be better. And like we've won a lot of deals. We've lost some deals. We've lost some deals that like I felt like we shouldn't have lost, and we got like out commercialed. And that's always, it feels the worst, is like when you lose because someone gave it away for free, or it feels like free, or they did whatever. But like there's always things you can learn to attack the other deal differently. And one of the things it's taught me was there are sometimes deals where you have to take a different tact than you normally would, because you know who the competition is going to be, and they're going to play not necessarily dirty, but they might take the gloves off a little bit sooner. So you need to kind of go like head to head and just like call things out. And I've seen a lot of success by taking some of that feedback and like going right at a competitor and be like, I know XYZ is going to tell you this, this, and this. Like, yeah, I know I wear the Zora badge, but let me tell you why that's wrong and why they're saying that. And then you should go ask them about like XYZ.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of success there. And that kind of throws, I think, the customers off sometimes because they're like, oh, I got fed this information by like what might have been my preferred vendor. And now they might not be my preferred vendor anymore because the customer, like I really turned the table on them. So yeah, that's the how you can learn from the negative side.
Would you say you're fairly competitive, Matt?
Fairly competitive, yes. That's what I think. That's what drives success, though. Like you have to have that competitiveness, or you're not going to be able to take the nose and keep going.
But I think that's the point. That's the point that I think is really interesting. There is, how do you react and respond when you have maybe a failure or something that doesn't go your way? And I think for sometimes quite a few salespeople, perhaps earlier in their careers, you can feel like you're taking lumps all the time and nothing is going your way, and you've got close or you've got towards the finish line, but you've not got the deal over the line. And sometimes it's hard to stay objective in those situations, but in reality, you're learning all the time. And I see a lot of this in perhaps more of the general business type space or SMB type space, where there's a lot of teeth cutting going on. There's a lot of chicanery going on from customers that are maybe saying all the right things, which you can parrot in your deal review, but their actions speak otherwise. So I think that resilience, that ability to just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going is probably something that I think all of the successful people that we interact with probably share. I mean, would you say that's perhaps a fair statement?
I would say it's a fair statement. And what I think that then allows you to do is when you build that mindset, it means when the good stuff starts happening and you have lots of pipeline, you're getting a lot of success, you can actually, I think, make smarter decisions within your actual sales cycles. I wanted to make sure I told this story. This was one of what we worked on together. And I think back to, we got an RFP from a company that sold connected garage doors. And we looked at the RFP together and we were like, we shouldn't even respond to this. It was written directly for one of our competitors. Let's just say no. We got plenty of other deals to work on. Like, it's not worth our time to go do all this effort just to like lose to a competitor. And we decided to say no a couple days before we had what was our big like customer conference. And we were standing next to each other in the customer conference while our CEO is giving the big keynote address. And the first thing he talks about was how connected garage door openers were going to be the next big thing in the subscription economy. And we looked at each other and we were like, shit, we're going to have to go work on this deal. So we left and we were like, what are we going to do? Like, we're not going to go back to them with our tail between our legs. And luckily enough, I think they emailed us like 2 days later and they were like, we really want to talk to you guys about not responding to the RFP. So we talked to them and we went really like at them. We were like, listen, we see your RFP. Like, we think we'd be a really great fit. We know we can do all these things, but it was written like directly for one of these competitors. Like, we're not going to just compete to be column fodder for you guys to pick somebody else, like the cheaper option. They were like, no. Like, we really like you guys. We flew to Chicago. Like, we did the demo. Yeah. We took them to dinner. We like won the deal like 2 weeks later, and it ended up being like one of our probably easiest, least competitive deals we did because we flipped the script on the competitor. And like, that's what confidence and pipeline can allow you to go do. But if this had been, a year earlier, or we were down in the dumps, like, we wouldn't have been probably confident enough to go do that. And sometimes even if you are actually down in the dumps, you have to take like that step back and be detached and say like, hey, this is written for a competitor. Should I waste all of my time on this, or should I focus on something else? And like, that's why that whole challenger sale methodology exists. But like, sometimes you do need to challenge the customer or challenge the GSI that's in the deal. I'm like, hey, like, I don't want to just participate in this to be the calm fodder. Or if like, that's all we are, I'll give you a super low quote. And like, you can do the competitor over and over again until they drop their price. But like, I'm not going to waste my team's time or like my time for this type of thing where I know I'm going to lose, because time is our like most precious quantity. Like, as an AE, as an SE, like you only have, even if you work a lot, like 40, 50 hours a week to spend doing these things. Don't focus your time on the wrong thing, because that's the easiest way to lose your way, to not close deals, to not hit quota, and then usually not have a job at that company anymore. So like be selfish with your time and focus on the right things.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that deal distinctly. And I think we were both sitting in the conference room together, and we took a phone call and we sort of said, yeah, you know, we're not going to participate in this, but we have the best product. So when you're ready, we're here for you. And we sort of hung up the phone. And I remember we sort of looked at each other and we were like, well, we'll see how this goes.
It worked out well.
It did work out well. But you're right, you have to maintain that level of objectivity and confidence sometimes. So listen, I know we're running up to time here. There's been some really great insights in here, and this is going to be really valuable for many people that are going to listen to this. So really appreciate your time and your insights. So as we wrap it up here, just one last thing, you know, as you think about the next generation of leaders or the next generation of salespeople that are coming through, if you had to condense all this down, you know, what would be the one piece of advice that you would perhaps write on a beer mat or a napkin and pass on to the next generation that's coming through?
I think like when I like boil it all down and I tell people like what's my one thing, it's always like be curious. And that might sound like cliche, but like that's the number one thing that in any sales in general is going to help you ingratiate yourself with the customer or prospect, to help learn about what's going on, to actually get deals done. Is the biggest way to actually build a relationship with somebody, and people do still buy from people, is like be curious. Ask them about their family, what they're doing in the business, at their job. Like people, when you come at it in like an empathetic, curious way, are going to keep talking. And as they keep talking, you're going to learn more and more. And as you build that relationship and keep asking about those things, that's where you start to actually learn more. Like I always think about some of the most important conversations in sales cycles don't necessarily happen while you're sitting at the conference room doing the demo or behind the Zoom screen doing the demo. It's like when you bump into them in the hallway getting coffee during the breaks, that's when they start to tell you more of what's actually going on at dinner. Like if you can keep asking those questions, they're going to give you more information. So it's really like be curious, and like the obvious one is like keep working really hard. Like hard work is the most important thing, but you need to be curious when you're asking those people those questions, because that's what's going to like let you build that relationship with people.
Well said. Hard work beats talent every time.
That's right.
Well, this has been great. We really appreciate your time, Matt. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yes. Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you.